Suzane Von Richtoften murdered her parents on Halloween night, October 31st, 2002. Suzane was born November 3rd, 1983, in São Paulo, Brazil, to a German father and a Lebanese-Brazilian mother. Her father was an engineer, and he worked with the São Paulo highway system, and her mother was a psychiatrist. She had a younger brother named Andreas. So Suzane was incredibly well off. Her parents had a net worth of, I believe it was several $1,000,000. She was incredibly shy, described as pretty, very well educated, and she was the rich girl. After graduating from high school in the summer of 1999, she went to practice Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I think I said that right. Where she met a young man named Daniel Cravinhos de Paulo e Silva. I think I said that right, but we will call him Daniel Cravinhos for now. Now, Daniel did not work. He did not go to school. He was kind of just a freeloading kind of pothead type of guy, and her parents very much disapproved of this union between them, of this relationship. So Suzane's mother and father went away for vacation for a whole month, and she moved Daniel in while they were away, to her parents' dismay. She asked her parents when they returned if they could buy her a flat so that she could live with Daniel, but her parents disapproved completely, and wanted her to end the relationship. This caused a great deal of strain and tension, and she refused to break up with Daniel, and that is when her parents decided that if she did not end this relationship, they would cut her off financially. Now we are on October 31st, 2002. Suzane took her brother to a friend's for the night to play video games, and she returned that evening to her home with Daniel and his brother Christian Cravinhos. The three entered the home. Suzane deactivated the alarm and went into her parents' room to verify that they were sleeping. Then she waited in the library, and the two brothers went upstairs and beat her parents with iron bars. And this was such a brutal murder scene. They suffered severely and lingered for a long time. They did not die right away. After they were beaten, Daniel attempted to drown out their sounds and to drown them with the wet washcloths, and eventually Suzane's father did die, but their mother, Suzane's mother, was still fighting for her life. So Daniel then grabbed a plastic bag and he suffocated her. Very, very gruesome scene. The trio then went into the next step of their plan, and that was to set scene had been staged. The trio split up. Suzane and Daniel went to a motel, and Christian went to a fast food restaurant, and they all established alibis. The next day, Suzane dropped Daniel off. I saw two different sources that said that Daniel was dropped off, and one said that Daniel was with them. I believe, though, that Suzane had dropped him off, and because I imagine that if she returned home with Daniel, her parents, if they were alive, would not have been okay with that. But she picked up her brother at 8:15 at the friend's house, and that's when Andreas and Suzane discovered their parents dead. And when investigating officers came to inspect, they knew right away, as I said earlier, this was a crime that had been committed by someone the victims knew. It was an incredibly personal nature. It was absolutely obscene. The murder was obscene and graphic and passionate, and the scene looked completely staged. There were cell phones left behind. There were other valuables left behind. And shortly after, the investigators noticed Suzane was being incredibly suspicious. Suzane was seen having a pool party the day after her parents were found murdered at their home. I believe Daniel was there and some other people were there as well. And people in the neighborhood found this incredibly suspicious. And even after her parents' funeral, she had a big, another party, like a 19th birthday party celebration at her home. And this was incredibly strange. And they began to question Suzane and Daniel and Christian. And I believe how their arrest came to be, if I'm remembering correctly, I did not write it down, but I believe that Christian went to buy a motorcycle or some sort of big item, and he paid with it in $100 crisp bills, and that was just strange and tipped investigators off. And then on November 9th, Daniel, Christian, and Suzane broke down and confessed. There was massive media attention in Brazil from this crime. People could not believe that this, beautiful, shy, blonde heiress could ever do something so terrible. And she was clearly hexed and under the spell of, Daniel and Christian Cravinhos, who were, not really, what's the word? They had been troublemakers. They were not really trustworthy young adults. So the brothers had fit the crime, but Suzane did not. And she was incredibly smart. She was incredibly educated and affluent. And the nation was shocked. They did not believe that she could have ever done this to her mother and father. And they didn't know what to believe. The community was incredibly vexed. However, an interview was aired that completely blew Suzane's credibility out of the water. When the interview was aired, Suzane was being instructed by a lawyer to be emotional, to cry out, and to create public sympathy, that this was going to be what would save her and keep her out of jail. She had to be emotional. And that's when everybody was like, okay, forget her. Forget this lady. Like, clearly, if you have to be coached to cry that your parents were murdered, then in July 2006, 4 years after the murder, Suzane went to trial in Sao Paulo. She was granted, I believe it's habeas corpus, and waited for the trial at home. So probably because, the community felt bad for her and she had an incredible amount of wealth, they kind of just let her stay at home and be comfortable until this whole thing was resolved. On the evidence and the confessions of Christian and Daniel both corroborated that that did not happen. And in fact, the mastermind was Suzane. Prosecution did say that this was the case, that she was the mastermind. She wanted freedom and independence. And her parents' wealth. Suzane was declared the mastermind, and she was described in the media as the evil blonde heiress. The evil blonde heiress, evil blonde heiress. July 22nd, 2006, I believe this was, 4 years after the crime. She was sentenced to 40 years along with Daniel, and Christian was sentenced to 38 for conspiracy. In 2009, she tried to appeal her case again. I believe she had attempted to get house arrest again, but that was not going to happen. And in 2011, she also tried to appeal again as well. I had a very hard time finding other information on if she had made other appeals or what she was doing, and anything that I could find that could have been telling to me, I couldn't read it. I couldn't understand it. I found videos and other information, but I didn't know how to I didn't understand it. And anything I did find that was in English was very much what I have just told you. But very interesting. I did find an article, like a crime blog or something written in English, that talked about how Suzane married a female inmate in the Brazilian prison. I don't know if that's a thing. I don't know. I found it interesting that was like the one other thing that I could find. So I'm just throwing it in there. Throwing it in there. Interesting. I don't know if that's a thing. And then I also found another article that said that Andreas Richtoften, Von Richtoften, Andreas, Suzane's brother, had sued her while I believe she was in prison for her half of her inheritance. He believes she didn't deserve a dime of it, and from what I found, she did lose the case, and Andreas was given the entire inheritance of their parents. Okay. That is all I have for you guys today. This was a quickie. Let me know if you've heard of Suzane Von Richtoften's case at all, and if you know any more information. I thought I was going to sneeze or cough or something, but I think I pulled it together. Okay. But yes, let me know if you've heard of this case before, and if you know any more information, I would love to know. Leave a comment below and let me know what you think. And don't forget, you guys, please, like this video if you like it, and share it with your friends, and please subscribe to the ASMR Witch channel and be a part of our little coven we have going on here. I'm trying to break my goal of 300. I want to get to 300 subscribers for the new year, and I know that's like in a couple of weeks, but I think it's feasible. We're at like 235 or something like that right now, so that's entirely feasible, especially if you tell your friends, tell them, and tell your grandma, tell your grandma about the ASMR much for all of your love, incredible comments, and praise and positivity and suggestions. I am so happy you are here, and I appreciate you so